And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to a new episode of the Experience Hockey Talk, serious hockey talk for serious hockey fans. I'm Michael Lindenbaum, and thanks for tuning in on both live on Facebook and on Twitch. Let's see here. Good. I can see my ugly mug on Twitch. That's a very good thing. And I see my ugly mug on Facebook. So we're doing good so far. I'm actually liking that already. I did a couple adjustments to see if that will fix some of the issues that we had from last week. I obviously worked on the frames per second and also on other quality things. But so far it looks good to me. So we'll keep an eye on it throughout the episode and make sure it doesn't crash on us like it did last week. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are going to start talking about the Atlantic Division, and then in a little bit we'll be joined by our Montreal Canadiens writer, Armand, and then after that we'll be joined by our New York Rangers writer, Russell Hartman, and then, of course, after that, I will be breaking down the remainder of the Metropolitan Division, with the exception of the Washington Capitals, which we'll be doing our Washington Capitals preview next Wednesday at 8 p.m. on Twitch. And I do thank everyone for working with us. I had to fix some issues with some of the tech stuff for those videos because I recorded those over the weekend. Also, if you have any questions, comments, whatever, feel free to shoot them in the comments on both Facebook and Twitch. I will be keeping an eye on both of them to see what you all are asking me or whatever comments, and if I like them and they're appropriate, I will throw them on the show. So, with that, we're going to move right on to the Boston Bruins, who last season were 50-20-12 with 112 points. They were second in the Atlantic Division. Key additions was defenseman John Moore, forward Joachim Nordstrom, and goalie Yaroslav Halak. Key departures for them was defenseman Nick Holden, forward Riley Nash, forward Rick Nash, forward Tim Schaller, and goalie Anton Khudobin. Top questions facing the Bruins this season is how will the top six look for the Boston Bruins? One of the best lines in the NHL last season featured David Pastrnak with Patrice Bergeron and Brad Marchand. But do you want to keep the majority of your scoring to the first line? One could say putting Pastrnak with David Krejci could bring better scoring balance to the second line, but then who would you put with Bergeron and Marchand, as well as with Pastrnak and Krejci? Which leads to quite a few possibilities, which leads into my second question, which is which young kids will take it up a notch? Forwards Jake DeBrusk, Danton Heinen had a good success last season, and Ryan Donato and Anders Bjork will get the opportunity to grow their games this season. All four of these young men have the potential of playing in the top six, and to see them all battling for it will make the competition amongst Boston, the young talent, fun to watch. Then next up, you have the Buffalo Sabres. Last season, they were 25-45-12 with 62 points and 8th in the Atlantic Division. Key additions for them is defenseman Matt Hunwick, forward Jeff Skinner, forward Patrick Berglund, forward Vladimir Sobotka, forward Connor Sheary, goalie Carter Hutton, and, of course, the number one overall pick, Rasmus Dahlin. Key departures was forward Ryan O'Reilly, forward Jordan Nolan, goalie Robin Lehner, and goalie Chad Johnson. Top questions facing the Sabres going into this season is how will Carter Hutton handle being the number one goaltender? Last season with the St. Louis Blues, Hutton played 32 games with a 2.09 goals against average and a 2.931 save percentage, which earned a 3-year deal with the Sabres to be their new number one goaltender. This will be Hutton's first crack at being a true starting netminder in the NHL, and he's doing it with a team that was dead last season. Plus, one of the big things to see is how will he handle a bigger workload outside of what he did in St. Louis. Also, too, how will the new pieces fit together in Buffalo? Phil Housley has a new challenge going into his second season behind the Buffalo bench as GM Jason Botterill brought in a lot of new faces to help the Sabres rebound after last season's disappointing year. It'll be interesting to see how Housley will do his lineup this season with all the new options at his disposal, especially at offense when you have brought in Jeff Skinner, Patrick Berglund, Vladimir Sobotka, Connor Sheary, especially Sheary, who's won 2 Stanley Cups. Berglund and Sobotka have a lot of playoff experience with St. Louis. Jeff Skinner was the top goal scorer for the Carolina Hurricanes, so they added a lot of good pieces And they really didn't give up a lot of pieces either in that. So that was actually pretty good for the Buffalo Sabres. Next up, you have the Detroit Red Wings, who last season were 30, 39, and 13 with 73 points, fifth in the Atlantic Division. Key additions for them was forward Thomas Vanek and goalie Jonathan Bernier. Key departures was defenseman Xavier Ouellet, forward Eric Tangradi, and goalie Jared Coreau. Top questions facing the Red Wings. Number one, will Henrik Zetterberg play the season? Now, of course, I wrote this before Henrik Zetterberg retired. Now, obviously, now Detroit is without their captain because Henrik Zetterberg was unable to pass his medical. The doctors told him that he is not going to be able to play hockey ever again. So Henrik Zetterberg has been forced to retire. So one now has to go. The original question, will Henrik Zetterberg play this season? The answer to that question is no. So now the new question is, what impact with Henrik Zetterberg's retirement will this play on the Detroit Red Wings? Obviously, being how he's over 35, his cap hit has to remain on the Red Wings cap. They cannot remove it at all with him retired now. So that is dead space that's being used on their cap that they cannot use to sign anyone else. So there's that impact that's going to happen. Plus, not only that, but now you don't have a leader in the locker room like Henrik Zetterberg. So who are some of these young kids going to start looking up to in that locker room? Pavel Datsyuk's gone. Now Henrik Zetterberg's gone. Johan Franzen is essentially done. So who is going to be the guy who steps up and leads this team and gives these young guys a person to look at or to look up to? That is a key question for the Detroit Red Wings now that Henrik Zetterberg is officially retired. And then the second question is, can the Red Wings have a good season? Despite being a bottom dweller that is rebuilding of sorts, the Red Wings have the highest salary cap number in the league. The amount of veterans and the number of young kids that are developing nicely, Detroit could, in theory, surprise a lot of people despite not making the playoffs this season, which a lot of people do not expect Detroit to make the playoffs, and I don't either. Next up, you have the Florida Panthers. Last season, they're 44, 30, and 8 with 96 points, fourth in the Atlantic Division. They were this close to making it into the playoffs, but New Jersey was able to edge them out of it. Key additions was forward Troy Brouwer, forward Mike Hoffman, and goalie Michael Hutchinson. Key departures was forward Radim Vrbata. Top questions facing the Panthers. Can the Panthers continue where they left off? Once the Florida Panthers cleaned house in their front office and got rid of all those analytical guys, they were able to get back on track. They were able to come 1 point away from making the playoffs with a couple added pieces, especially some veteran leadership in like Troy Brouwer. The Panthers are working their way in the right direction. Also, with the recent naming of Alexander Barkov as the captain of the Florida Panthers, the Panthers are definitely on the right track of getting back to where they should be. What impact will Roberto Luongo have? While still playing at an elite level, one has to consider the health of Luongo. And if he can stay healthy and be a major contributor to the success of the Panthers. At 39 years old, Luongo is still the number one goalie, but he has played less games than James Reimer last season because of injuries. So he's the number one goalie who played less games than the backup goaltender because of injuries. So that's a key thing right there for the Panthers, is obviously the health of Roberto Luongo. Now, next up is the Ottawa Senators, who last season were 28, 43, and 11 with 67 points and 7th in the Atlantic Division. Key additions is forward Paul Carey, forward Mikhail Bodker, and forward Chris Tierney. Key departures for them is defenseman Frederick Claesson, forward Mike Hoffman, forward Alexander Burrows, and now recently, defenseman Erik Karlsson. Now, top questions facing the Senators. Where do the Senators go now? With all the distractions going on in Ottawa right now, which resulted in both Mike Hoffman and Erik Karlsson to be traded. Obviously, Mike Hoffman for his girlfriend harassing Erik Karlsson's wife. And then, of course, for Erik Karlsson, the question of would he ever sign an extension with the Ottawa Senators. They've been traded. And Craig Anderson requesting to be traded because of all the drama going on in Ottawa. This franchise is in disarray. How this team bands together will be key to their success. Now, Number 2, will Brady Tkachuk crack the lineup? Tkachuk is determined to make the opening night roster for the Senators and has left Boston University to chase his goal. However, being with all of the drama going on in Ottawa right now, one can say maybe Tkachuk coming in with his youthful enthusiasm is something that this team needs, but also at the same time, it could also be a detriment to him because if you're going with all of this drama going around, especially with such a young kid, that could be a very problematic thing. So one has to look at that. Does he crack the lineup? He left Boston University to chase his dream to be in the NHL. So it's very interesting to take a look at. Next up, you have the Tampa Bay Lightning. Last season, they're 54, 23, and 5 with 113 points. They're first in both the Atlantic Division and the Eastern Conference. Their key additions was defenseman Cameron Gauntz. Key departures was defenseman Andre Schuster, forward Eric Condra, forward Chris Kunitz, goalie Peter Budaj, and shockingly, general manager Steve Yzerman. Now, first question we got to ask, how will Steve Yzerman's departure affect the team? This past week, Steve Yzerman recently and shockingly stepped down as general manager, citing family reasons. Having this happen so suddenly, especially with a highly respected hockey mind, one has to wonder if this could be also put head coach John Cooper on the hot seat. Now that Julien Brisebois is now the general manager of the organization, it'll be very interesting to see how this all plays out moving forward. And one key thing is that can the Lightning rise above? After 3 conference finals appearances in 4 seasons, and with Cooper having a new coaching staff for a 3rd straight season, one has to ask if this team can rise above and finally get themselves back to the Stanley Cup Finals. With salary cap restraints creeping up on them, this could be a cup or bust season for the Tampa Bay Lightning. And actually, I'm going to put that note over here because I want to talk a little bit more about Steve Yzerman before we move on to Armand after the Toronto Maple Leafs. And which brings us to the Toronto Maple Leafs, who last season were 49, 26, and 7 with 105 points, 3rd in the Atlantic Division. Key additions was forward John Tavares, forward Tyler Ennis, forward Adam Cracknell, and GM Kyle Dubois. Key departures is defenseman Roman Polak, forward Matt Martin, forward Tyler Bozak, forward James Van Riemsdyk, forward Leo Komarov, forward Tomas Buchanan, and GM Lou Lamoriello. Top questions facing the Maple Leafs is, number 1, can the Maple Leafs shore up their defensive woes? Last season, Toronto allowed the fourth most shots on goal per game. However, the goaltending of Frederik Andersen and Curtis McElhinney kept the Leafs in game. The Leafs can shore up their left side and pick up a top 4 defenseman, then they can legitimately become a Stanley Cup contender in the NHL. And then the second question is, what impact will John Tavares bring? Obviously, the former captain and franchise player of the New York Islanders left Long Island to become, to have the ability to play for his hometown team. So one has to ask, what could this do, especially the fact that you have a franchise player in Austin Matthews, who is also, in a lot of people's eyes, the incumbent captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now you have a veteran guy like John Tavares there, who has been a captain for the last 5 years on Long Island. That gives you instant credibility. You still have Patrick Marleau there. So it's very interesting to see how that will happen. Plus, not only that, but with John Tavares being the first-line center, that will move Austin Matthews down to the second line and take actually some pressure off of him, which is also good for Austin Matthews at the same time. So it will be very interesting to see how that dynamic works in Toronto with those fine people. Now that leads me, I'm going to loop back to the Tampa Bay Lightning for a moment and talk about Steve Yzerman because of just how shocking this was to see this happen. I feel that it's important to actually talk about it right now. And the number one thing I'm going to say right now is this. I would not be surprised if you see Steve Yzerman as the next general manager of the Detroit Red Wings. I say that because he has ties to Detroit. When he announced that he was stepping down, he went back to Detroit. That was a key thing right there. He went back to Detroit where his family is. So and he's going to still be in an advisor role for the Lightning. But my gut says is that maybe he has 1 year left in his contract. He knew that Tampa Bay didn't want to lose Julien Brisebois to another team for him to become a general manager. And with the status that Detroit is in right now, where they're bottom dwellers who are rebuilding sort of, but yet still have the highest salary cap number in the entire league, I wouldn't be surprised, especially with how smart he is, if he does take over in Detroit and he rights that ship there, because that is a ship that definitely needs righting. So I really wouldn't be surprised if that happened. And I think it would be paramount if he did go there, because that would be a massive boost for the Detroit Red Wings if he did become the new general manager. So definitely shocking that Steve Yzerman stepped down, but it'll be interesting to see what is the next thing that will happen for him. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, I would say we're going to go to a break, but apparently I forgot to put in the break plugs into the program. So we're just going to go right into the segment with Armand. Once we do that, we'll be going into our segment with Russell Hartman, who is our New York Rangers writer, and then I'll be back to talk about the Metropolitan Division, and minus the Caps. We're saving that for next week. So stay tuned for this non-existent break to talk to Armand, and then a non-existent break to talk to our good friend Russell Hartman. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Experience Hockey Talk, serious hockey talk for serious hockey fans. And I am here joined by our Montreal Canadiens writer, Armand. Armand, I have already talked about the majority of the Atlantic Division, but now we're going to talk about your team, the Montreal Canadiens. Last season, they were 29, 40, and 13 with 71 points. They were 6th in the Atlantic Division. Their key additions was defenseman Xavier Ouellet, forward Joel Armia, forward Max Domi, forward Thomas Plekanec, and obviously the acquisitions of Nick Suzuki and Tomas Tatar from Vegas, and a Max Pacioretty, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Key departures for the Montreal Canadiens is forward Daniel Carr, forward Adam Cracknell, forward Alex Chenyuk, and of course forward Max Pacioretty. Of the key additions and key departures of the Montreal Canadiens, what were your thoughts about that?
I like the Max Domi trade personally. I think Max Domi, once they traded for Max Domi, they said, hey, we're going to have him as a winger. I think that was a big challenge with Galchenyuk, is they wanted to play him at center. They wanted to play him at wing. I think now that we know Domi's going to be on the wing, that solves a lot of issues. The Plekanec, I love having Plekanec back. If you look at the trade, great for us. We pretty much got back everything we gave up in return from Toronto. And Plekanec is a great face-off guy, which Montreal could use, even though they're in a rebuild. But I don't see Plekanec being with the Canadiens more than 1 or 2 years moving forward.
All right. Then looking at the top questions facing the Montreal Canadiens, obviously the first one that you brought up was the defense. Obviously, Shea Weber is going to be out for a significant amount of time again to start the season. Carl Alsner is not essentially as advertised, so he's being overpaid by the Canadiens on D. But they did pick up Xavier Ouellet. What are your thoughts on the defense for the Montreal Canadiens going into this?
Personally, I think the number one pairing, I think you got to go with Mete and Petrie. I've talked about this a lot, but Mete's 19, 20 years old. He's being forced into the number one role on the D line. Montreal doesn't have a good partner for Weber. So no matter what, you got to give Mete first pairing minutes. I like how Mete's played. so far. And Petrie looked solid last season when Weber went down. So Xavier Ouellet, I think it's a great addition for Montreal. They need young defensemen. They're in a rebuild, and I'm very interested to see what he can bring to Montreal come this season.
All right, and then the next question that you brought up, and this is actually a big one that has hampered them the last few seasons, which is their scoring. Obviously, you pick up Jonathan Drouin in the past off season. He was able to generate for you, but he can't do everything on his own. What do you see in regards to the Montreal Canadiens and what is potentially their biggest need, and that's scoring?
I've last season I heard a lot of big things. They were going to go out. They were going to get Stastny. They were going to get a big top line center to fill the need. Which, I get it that they got Suzuki, but I still don't think they filled the immediate need. But scoring wise, I do think they have Gallagher. I think they have Domi. Lehkonen is going to be a very interesting thing to see how he produces. And I think once Weber comes back, he'll be a big scorer on the blue line.
All right. And then, of course, one thing you brought up was the empty vacancy at captain. Obviously, with Max Pacioretty getting traded, that you don't have a captain, but you do have leaders on that team. For this type of team, at the stage that they're at, would it be beneficial to not have a captain?
I'm going to disagree with you on that.
Well, I wasn't saying that they should. I was just asking.
No, but I think Montreal needs to really look at it, and if they're correct, and if they look at it the right way, the next captain of the Montreal Canadiens is Brendan Gallagher. If you look at Gallagher, nitty-gritty guy, can put up goals, is always there to back up his teammates, and he's young. And that's that. And we all know Montreal is going that route of rebuilding. So I've heard rumors of giving Weber the captain role, giving Buchanan it, but you got to be honest with yourself. Is those guys are only going to be captain for 1 or 2 years. Give it to Gallagher, and he's got a long-term role in that situation.
Right. Now, when you look at the Canadiens overall, what's your overall thoughts on this team? And do you really see them going that far, standings-wise?
No. I don't see them going that far. I do see them in a rebuild mode, and I do think this season will be beneficial to them. I would definitely like to see them give Suzuki a few games in the NHL. Kotkaniemi, I think he gets at least 9 games. But I think Montreal really needs to look at what they have in the minors. I would love to say we're going to be better than Ottawa, which I believe we do. But besides that, I just don't see how Montreal is able to make the playoffs. I don't think, and as we've all learned, Price can't do everything.
Do you think Carey Price is regarding signing that 8-year contract?
What were you saying?
Do you think Carey Price is regretting signing that 8-year contract?
If I'm gonna put myself as Carey Price, yes. I don't have headphones at the moment, sorry. But I don't know where Price is gonna be. I think he regrets signing the deal without a doubt. But I think if you look at it, Montreal in 2 or 3 years could be a very solid team who can make a big playoff run.
All right. So real quick, Armand, where can the people find you on social media?
You can find me on Instagram, actually on Twitter, A Klisevich, that's capital A, capital K, Lisivitch. I'm on Instagram at Armand, Armand, is awesome at ISAWESOME, and on Facebook, Klisevich, Armand, Klisivitch.
All right. And of course, you'll have all that stuff in your bio on TXHThockey.com, correct? Yep. I'll take that nod as yes. So, Armand, thanks for coming on. Ladies and gentlemen, when we come back, we're going to be joined by our good friend Russell Hartman. We begin our Metropolitan Division pre. And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Experience Hockey Talk Series Hockey Talk for Serious Hockey fans. I want to thank Armand, our Montreal Canadiens writer, for coming on to wrap up our Atlantic Division conversation by talking about the Montreal Canadiens. And as you can tell by the beautiful mug that constantly keeps rotating side to side from time to time, he is returning. He is also our New York Rangers writer, part-time, I believe, correct? Part-time basis. It's our good friend Russell Hartman. Russell, how you been, bud?
Doing well, man. I've missed hockey a lot. It was weird having the playoffs without my team in it for once. Like, only the first time in the last decade we weren't in the tournament. But I'm happy the training camp is starting back up and I get to watch my team again.
All right. Now, there's a minor change, and I held off on this on purpose so you can. But Tilted Ice has a new name.
Tilted Ice is now known as Forever Blue Shirts Radio. It's been that way for about a few months now. We just kind of did a rebrand, so our podcast is essentially closer to what our actual site is called, Forever Blue Shirts. But yeah, same people, same quality content, same stuff, just different name.
And that's why you're part-time with us, because you are doing the whole thing with Forever Blue Shirts, which we Forever Blue Shirts allowing us to have you contribute articles from time to time for us. We look forward to your many crying and other stuff like that.
Oh yeah, I got some good stuff planned for this year. Considering, well, we'll get into my team in just a little bit, right?
We're gonna hop right into it. We're actually gonna start our Atlantic Division talk. Our Atlantic Division. Oh, we just finished that. Our Metropolitan Division conversation right now. We're actually going to start with the New York Rangers. Where last season they were 34, 39, and 9. They're dead last in the Metropolitan Division. Some of their key additions this offseason was defenseman Frederick Clayson, goalie Dustin Tokarski, defenseman Adam McQuaid, who they just picked up in the trade last week from Boston right before camp, and head coach David Quinn. Some key departures is forward Paul Carey, forward David Desharnais, and head coach Alain Vigneault, along with goaltender Andre Pavlik. When you look at how they ended last season, the additions that they made, the departures that they did, how do you think the Rangers did during this offseason?
Well, they're sticking with the plan. Ever since they sent the letter out almost about a month out of the trade deadline last season, informing season ticket holders, informing fans that this team was going to be rebuilt, or as they like to say, retool in New York, but it's a rebuild. We know what's going on here. I like that they stayed quiet in the offseason relatively. I mean, you have Adam McQuaid coming in now, a little more experience, a guy who's not afraid to get people out of the front of the net. You have Frederick Clayson, who at times was partnered with Erik Karlsson, so he knows how to play with skilled players. Two guys that are going to have to prove that they belong on this team because there's a lot of hungry rookies that are looking for spots in camp. But I like what they did in the offseason, especially hiring a new head coach in David Quinn, who just from hearing the guy talk for 2 or 3 press conferences already, I know his mindset and the way that he's going to train this team is better than Alain Vigneault did.
Now, one of the top questions that you asked in your preview article for TXHThockey.com was how will the rookies impact the lineup? In your opinion, there's going to be a lot of rookies in that lineup, like a Elias Anderson and a Philip Cheitel. What can you expect out of these kids?
So right now, I think you can easily pencil Elias Anderson and Philip Cheitel into the 2 and 3 center spots on the team right off the bat. I think they're both going to make the team. They're both going to have an impact. I'd like to see 50 points out of each of them this year. Kind of high. That everything kind of has to go right for that, but I expect somewhere between 30 and 50 points for the duo this year. They signed 2 undrafted free agents from the Swedish Hockey League in Ville Meskinen and Michael Lindqvist. Both of them scored at least 20 goals last year. I believe Meskinen had 24 and Lindqvist had 20. They're going to be competing for spots. Jeff Gorton has gone on record saying he thinks both of them can make the roster. which already puts it at 4 rookies at that point. And then you go to the defense, you have guys like Libor Hayek, who they acquired in the Ryan McDonough trade. Brett Howden, going back to the forwards, who's a center, who they also acquired in the Ryan McDonough trade to the Tampa Bay Lightning. And you could have something like 6 rookies getting into your lineup, and it wouldn't surprise me with the amount of talent they have. And veterans aren't safe this training camp. You got to fight for your job. You need to show that you belong to be a part of a core of an eventual Stanley Cup contender. And David Quinn's going to, evaluate. He's going to see who's putting in the work. And from there on, you could definitely have as much as 6 rookies in your lineup.
Right. And then going into your next question, is this the beginning of the end for Henrik Lundqvist? As we know, he's getting up there in age. He's still able to play at a high level, but it's also kind of the same question that we throw at the likes of Roberto Luongo too, being however Luongo is like 39 years old. So what are your thoughts on Henrik Lundqvist, especially going into this season?
Well, Henrik Lundqvist is not going to be the goaltender he was in his late 20s and early 30s anymore. He's starting to get up there in age, but it's not to say that he's going to do a bad job. I just think the defense is going to have to tighten up a little bit in front of him. I don't think we're going to see miraculous save after miraculous save after miraculous save again, but I think he can easily play until he's 40, 41, similar to what Martin Brodeur did. I think he can easily play another, 4 or 5 years, but he's not going to be the guy that he was. He's going to need the defense to not be so flat-footed. He's going to need the defense to make plays and make sure no one gets in front of his net and stays there.
Right. And let's also keep in mind that even though Brodeur was playing at that high level, he wasn't really playing at a very high level in his 40s. He was probably playing past his expiration date on that one, and that's something that you don't want to see with Henrik Lundqvist either. And then the last question you brought up was, how will David Quinn adjust to being a full-time NHL head coach? Obviously, he's coming from the college ranks, just like Jim Montgomery for the Dallas Stars, who's coming from the University of Denver. What are your thoughts on David Quinn being new head coach, and how do you think the adjustment period will be for him and the team?
So, David Quinn, I love the pick that they made, choosing him to lead the team into this rebuild, into the future, because he knows how to work with players. He's really good at developing relationships. He's all about puck possession, which I talked about on the last Forever Blue Shirts podcast as well. And he seems like he knows how to deal with the types of players he's going to run into. As he said in his press conference a few days ago, you don't coach a 21-year-old player the same way you coach a 31-year-old player, and that's really important to know. Another thing I like that he said was that it falls on me, it falls on the head coach to develop these relationships with my players. Alain Vigneault never kind of said things like that. So it's really positive to see a guy that's going to focus on developing relationships, getting the most out of his team, fast, physical, relentless hockey right from the bat. They're not expected to do well this year. A lot of analysts are picking them to finish 8th in the Metro and possibly even finish with a lottery pick. But you can be sure that even if they do, David Quinn is not going to let them do it lying down. They're going to fight, they're going to claw, and they're going to scratch their way to every point they can. No matter how low that point total may be, but they're going to fight and they're going to be competitive each and every night. And I think David Quinn, I don't think they could have made a better choice. And of course, there's going to be growing pains. Whenever you get a new coach, teams have to learn the system. Teams are going to be, they're going to be trying to get it in their heads where they have to be, the right positioning and all of that. And probably for the first month, maybe month and a half, it's going to be a little rough. And then as it starts to click, you'll start seeing David Quinn's system take hold.
Where do you see the Rangers at by the end of the season?
I definitely think 8th in the Metropolitan, and it sucks to say, but
8th with the Islanders.
I think even the Islanders at this point, they're going to be angry. They're going to want to have something to prove with John Tavares leaving, going to the Maple Leafs. They're going to have this pressure on them, and I think they're not going to come in last. I don't think. I think the Carolina Hurricanes did enough that they're not going to come in last. Andrei Svechnikov is going to come in and score 30 goals. Their defense, they short up and is actually really good. The Rangers' blue line is kind of suspect right now. The forwards are really young when you include all these rookies. Henrik Lundqvist, I don't know what his workload is going to be like this season, so 7th or 8th in the Metropolitan is probably what they're going to finish. And overall for their future, to get a lottery pick and get someone like Capo Caco or Jack Hughes next year is what they need.
All right. Well, Russell, we're near the end for you. Where can the people find you on the social media, my friend?
You can find me on Twitter at RussellHartman1, and you can follow Forever Blue Shirts at Forever Blue Shirts on Twitter, and you can follow my podcast, Forever Blue Shirts Radio, at 4B Radio.
All right, Bud, it's great to have you on again. We're going to have you on again real soon. I am going to be in Jersey in November.
Cool, I got to come back to that then.
Oh, yeah, you do. I'll be up there. We got to record some stuff together again, my friend. All right, with that,
definitely.
Ladies and gentlemen, with that, we'll be right back, and we're going to take care of the rest of the Metropolitan Division, plus NHL news and notes, because, oh, man, since the last time we were on the air, there has been a lot of news and notes.
San Jose Sharks probably have the best blue line in the league right now.
Oh, yeah. We'll be right back.
And ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Experience Hockey Talk, the live version of the show, not the pre-recorded segments. But you know what? I'm very appreciative that I was able to get Armand and Russell to take some time to speak with me about their respective teams that they cover. Moving on to the Metropolitan Division, the rest of the Metropolitan Division, ladies and gentlemen, we have the Carolina Hurricanes, who last season were 36-35-11 with 83 points and 6 in the Metro Division. Key additions was defenseman Calvin DeHaan, defenseman Dougie Hamilton, forward Jordan Martinook, forward Michael Ferland, and goalie Peter Mrazek. Key departures was defenseman Noah Hannafin, forward Jeff Skinner, forward Joakim Nordstrom, forward Elias Lindholm, and goalie Cam Ward, along with Bill Peters as the head coach, leaving the team for the Calgary Flames. Now, obviously, top questions facing the Carolina Hurricanes is, who are the Carolina Hurricanes? This is the number one question right here. Who are the Carolina Hurricanes? With Tom Dundon as the new owner of the Hurricanes, he has made both good and very questionable decisions, naming Don Waddell, who did an abysmal job with the Atlanta Thrashers, and as the general manager raises a lot of questions. While he did a great trade with Calgary that brought in Dougie Hamilton and the signing of Calvin DeHaan, but the trade of their top leading goal scorer, Jeff Skinner, took them also a step back. Now, it's very, they short up their defense, but their offense is still anemic when you look at it. And then the next question you have about the Carolina Hurricanes is, what type of coach will Rod Brind'Amour be? This will be Rod Brind'Amour's first opportunity to be a head coach at any level. He has never been a head coach anywhere else in the National Hockey League. So, one has to wonder, what type of systems will he implement? How will he set up his lineup? How will players receive him as a head coach, knowing that he is not an experienced coach at all? So there's a lot of questions that are involved in regards to Rod Brind'Amour being the new head coach. We have a lot of questions in regards to Don Waddell being the general manager. We have a lot of questions about Rod Brind'Amour being the coach. We have a lot of questions about Tom Dundon being the owner, because since he took over as owner, he got rid of Ron Francis. Bill Peters didn't want anything to do with the Carolina Hurricanes, so he left to go to Calgary, which is probably in a better situation than the Carolina Hurricanes are. And you got to wonder how much say Rod Brind'Amour and Don Waddell really have with Tom Dundon wanting to be a hands-on owner. So there's a lot of question marks when you look at the Carolina Hurricanes and what they could become this season. Next up, you have the Columbus Blue Jackets, who last season were 45-30-7 with 97 points. They're fourth in the Metro Division, taking one of the wild card spots. Key additions was defenseman Adam Clendenning, forward Anthony Duclair, and forward Riley Nash. Key departures was defenseman Ian Cole, defenseman Jack Johnson, forward Thomas Vanek, and defenseman Matt Calvert. Top questions facing the Columbus Blue Jackets is, number one, will Artemi Panarin be in Columbus come the trade deadline? With Panarin in the last year of his contract and his unwillingness to negotiate on an extension leads one to ask if Columbus will try to trade him before the trade deadline. Also, one has to wonder how much of a distraction this can be for the team, especially the fact that he's also best friends with goaltender Sergei Bobrovsky. He's in the last year of his contract with Columbus, and what that could mean for Columbus as a whole moving forward, because they may end up not only trading a potential top goal scorer on their team, but also trading their top goaltender, because he may not want to stay with Columbus anymore either. So you got a couple interesting dynamics with Artemi Panarin, not just with Panarin himself, but also the friendship that he has with Sergei Bobrovsky and the uneasiness that it could create in Columbus. And then the next question is, what do they have to do to advance in the playoffs? For the third time in franchise history, the Blue Jackets made the playoffs, but once again, they couldn't get out of the first round. They held a series lead for the first time in franchise history, but would lose 4 straight to the Capitals once they had a 2-0 series lead on them. For Columbus, what is it? You had Sergei Bobrovsky go to a sports psychologist to try to get himself fixed and into the game more. You had guys flat out say, I think it was Werenski said it, or it was one of the other guys on the team saying that they look at the Capitals and see what they did. This was a team that couldn't get out of the second round, and they just persevered and they pushed through, and that's what they need to do, and that's what they need to learn. Most importantly, they need to learn to do that. So it'll be very interesting to see, A, what happens with Columbus if they make the playoffs, and B, if they can get out of the first round. It was a good season for them. They did, in fact, get the, they did, in fact, get out of the, they got 2 wins instead of 1 like they usually got. They actually had a series lead for 1, so you did see growth in the Columbus Blue Jackets, especially in the playoffs. Next up, you have the New Jersey Devils. Last season, they were 44-29-9 with 97 points, 5th in the Metro, and they were the second wild card. Key additions was defenseman Eric Gryba, forward Eric Tangradi. Key departures was defenseman John Moore, forward Jimmy Hayes, forward Patrick Maroon, forward Michael Grabner, and forward Brian Gibbons. Top questions facing the Devils. Can the Devils get more offense? Last season, Taylor Hall registered 93 points, but then the next closest player was rookie Nico Hischier with 52 points. The Devils are going to need more contributions from others if they hope they continue to improve. Marcus Johansson and Kyle Palmieri will both need to have strong years and, most importantly, stay healthy for the New Jersey Devils. Next up, how will the young talent continue to develop? With GM Ratio letting veterans John Moore, Michael Grabner, and a couple others go with the intentions of letting the younger guys getting more opportunity, can guys like Pavel Zacha, Miles Wood, Jesper Bratt, Will Butcher, and others step up and help round out this team, or will they need more time? This could be a deciding factor for the Devils if they're going to make the playoffs or not for a second season in a row. Next up, you have the New York Islanders. Last season, they're 35-37-10 with 80 points, 7 in the Metro Division. Key additions was forward Matt Martin, forward Tom Kuhnhackl, forward Leo Komarov, forward Valtteri Filppula, head coach Barry Trotz, and GM Lou Lamoriello. Key departures for the Islanders was defenseman Calvin DeHaan, forward John Tavares, forward Alan Quinn, and goaltender Yaroslav Halak, along with general manager Garth Snow and coach Doug Weight. Top questions facing the Islanders is, how will the Islanders fare without John Tavares? With Tavares now in Toronto, the Islanders are without the face of the franchise, and the ramifications are going to be felt for a while. With Lou Lamoriello at the helm and Barry Trotz now behind the bench, they will be tasked with creating a new future for the Islanders without John Tavares. Also, how much lower will the Islanders sink? Despite the great office pickups of Barry Trotz and Lou Lamoriello, in terms of players, there wasn't a big upgrade anywhere, and most of the pickups were more like depth players. The Islanders are going to be near the bottom for a while, but they'll still be a competitive team, like we've seen with the Carolina Hurricanes, where they've always been at the bottom, but they've always been very competitive, and they made you earn your wins. Because, let's be honest, you lose Calvin DeHaan, who's a top defenseman, you lose John Tavares, who is the face of your franchise, and you add Matt Martin, Tom Kuhnhackl, Leo Komarov, and Valtteri Filppula. You didn't really do a big defensive signing at all. You brought in Matt Martin, who's like a fourth-line winger. Kuhnhackl's probably a third-line winger. Komarov, Komarov you could probably put in your top 6. Filppula's like bottom 6. So it's like you really just picked up more depth players, after you lose a franchise number 1 center type of guy. So it's going to be interesting in the Island. I disagree with Russell. I think the Islanders are probably going to be in last place in the division, maybe Carolina. It could be a 3-way tie between the Rangers, the Islanders, and the Hurricanes, but that's just my opinion. Next up, you got the Philadelphia Flyers, who were 42, 26, and 14 with 98 points, third in the Metro Division. Their key additions was defenseman Christian Folin and forward James Van Riemsdyk. Key departures was defenseman Brandon Manning, forward Matt Reed, forward Valtteri Filppula, and goaltender Peter Mrazek. Top questions facing the Flyers is how will the Flyers goaltending be this season? Last season, both Brian Elliott and Michael Neuvirth had injury-plagued seasons, and with Carter Hart developing nicely for the Flyers in developmental, one has to wonder who will be the number one goalie, plus what happens if injuries plague them again this season. Both Elliott and Neuvirth are both coming off off-season surgery and are in the last year of their contract, so there's a lot of things going on with the goaltending for the Flyers going into this season. A lot of questions, especially when you have a young kid like Carter Hart in the wings ready to take over for the Flyers. And number two, can the Flyers continue their upward trend? Ron Hextall's patient build from within approach has been paying dividends as the Flyers rebounded and returned to the playoffs last season. The signing of James Van Riemsdyk and the development of their young core, the Flyers have the tools to continue to trend upwards. And actually, you know, I'm going to throw it out there. I could see him in the top three of the Metropolitan Division again for the Eastern Conference. So that is a team I would definitely say is a scary threat. And then lastly, you have the Pittsburgh Penguins. Last season, they're 47-29-6 with 100 points even, second in the Metro Division, and defeated by the Washington Capitals in the second round. Throw that one out there. Key additions was defenseman Jack Johnson, forward Matt Cullen, and forward Jimmy Hayes. Key departures was defenseman Matt Hunwick, forward Connor Sheary, forward Carter Rowney, and forward Tom Kuhnackel. Top questions facing the Penguins is, can Matt Murray rebound from a subpar season? Last season was Murray's first full season as a number one goaltender, and it was met with mixed results as he registered a 2.92 goals against average and a .907 save percentage in 49 games. Murray also dealt with injury issues as well. Murray will need to have a more complete season if he'd like to bounce back from last season. Are the Penguins regressing? Now, I asked this question because we've seen it with both Chicago and Los Angeles, but are the Penguins at a much slower rate? That's the key thing, at a slower rate. Regressing. With the salary cap, it is hard to keep full teams together like the way it has been with Chicago, where they win a cup, unload like 3 or 4 players, win a cup, unload 3 or 4 players, win a cup, unload 3 or 4 players. But also the core gets older and things start to slow down like it was in Los Angeles. You know, the core got slower. You know, they weren't getting quicker. And this is now a game of speed. The Pens don't have the same cap issues that Chicago has had yet, but one has to think with the major contract that Sidney Crosby, Evgeny Malkin, Chris Letang, eventually Matt Murray, you know, these contracts are going to come back to bite them a little bit, especially when they have young guys who are really good and really worth the big money contracts. You know, it's going to make it very hard for the Pittsburgh Penguins in that regard. And then, of course, you have, but it's not as bad as Chicago where they have multiple guys, you know, with monster contracts. So it'll be interesting. I definitely see Pittsburgh in the top 3. I know all the Caps fans watching this don't want to hear me say that, but guess what? It's what it is going to be. Deal with it. So let's see here. All right, we're doing good on Twitch. We're doing good on Facebook. I think I fixed some of our technical issues from last week. That makes me very happy. So, with that said, that's good. I'll just leave it alone. I don't care. Well, anyways, so there's still some type of technical difficulty, isn't there? Oh, there we go. Okay, we fixed it. Good. So with that, yeah, I just want to, do a little bit of news and notes. So obviously, I already discussed the whole thing about Steve Yzerman stepping down in Tampa Bay, Julien Brisebois taking over as the new general manager. Obviously, I believe that was done to keep Julien Brisebois as in the organization of Tampa Bay. And I seriously do believe that what's his name? Steve Yzerman will become the next general manager of the Detroit Red Wings, especially if the Red Wings have another abysmal season this upcoming season. So I definitely believe that. And then the other thing is that obviously the Erik Karlsson trade. Oh, now you want to drop frame rates at the end of the show. At least it's at the end of the show, not the beginning of the show like it was last week. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for telling me. High CPU usage. Let's see here. I can kill the 9 minutes if I want to. So, but yeah, so the Erik Karlsson trade, Ottawa got hosed big time on that trade. I don't think they got anything truly of value back. I mean, the thing with the draft picks is good. Obviously, the Mike Hoffman clause, where if Erik Karlsson ends up on an Eastern Conference roster as a reserve, they get that like extra pick. What the heck happened here? Twitch went goofy. No, it dropped frame rates again. I'll take a look at it when I get off the air. But yeah, I definitely think Ottawa got hosed on that trade for Erik Karlsson. That San Jose got away with the steal, and yeah, Ottawa's going to be in a tough spot this season. You know, I remember because I've been posting our articles in a bunch of Facebook groups, and you know, one person was like, you know, this team's going to stink, and I'm like, yeah, I think a few teams are going to stink this year. Just, you know, paying attention to what's been going on in the NHL and how these teams are run and who's doing what and what decisions they're making. It's very clear to me that yeah, there's going to be quite a few bad teams this season. So, but yeah, and Ottawa's going to unfortunately be one of them. So, but yeah, so yeah, key things. Next Wednesday at 8 p.m. we will be doing TXHT live on Twitch and Facebook Live once again. Follow us on Twitter at TXHT_hockey. Follow us on Twitch so you can get notified when we go live at twitch.tv/TXHT_hockey. Facebook at facebook.com/TXHThockey. Also like it and follow and get yourself notified when we go live. So I don't have to just share it in 5 million times, but I'd still share it 5 million times anyways to get people to watch. And then yeah, and then what's it called? And then oh, and obviously, and the new thing that Patreon. You can still be a patron of ours. Patreon.com/TXHT_hockey. I haven't posted on the page in a while. It's because my focus has been on the big thing, which is our new website, which is TXHThockey.com. Go there, check out the articles. Starting tomorrow, we will begin our Washington Capitals full-blown coverage. Tomorrow will be our Washington Capitals preview, and then after that, we'll start like looking at the forwards, probably like 2 lines at a time. Then we'll be looking at the defense, looking at the goaltending, looking at the coaching staff, and then leading up to next Wednesday's episode, where we will be doing full-blown Washington Capitals preview before the season starts for them. Also, we're going to be doing some demo runs on TXHThockey.com during some of the preseason games so we can actually get a rhythm on how we're going to be doing our live game coverage on the website. So definitely we love you all to join us on that. We will constantly tweet out and Facebook the link to that specific blog article that we be constantly updating for the live game coverage. It's obviously something that we're going to give a good old college try to get all the kinks out, so bear with us also at the same time while we make mistakes doing it, which we will. Also, Dixon, I know you're watching, but where's the daily for today, my friend? Yes, we do a daily notice. So, Dixon, eat that daily, buddy. Every day, around 8 or 9 o'clock p.m. So, but yeah, TXHThockey.com. All of the links of like our Patreon, Facebook, Twitter, they're all on there. Our Twitch link is on there. But yeah, TXHThockey.com. Go visit the site, read the articles. We're trying our best with them, and yeah. So let me see something else. Let's see. It's not that bad. It ain't that bad. But yeah, thanks for watching, and we'll be back next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Eastern. If anything changes, we will tweet it out, so definitely follow the Twitter page. So until next time, we will see you